Sonic the Hedgehog has quite the colorful roster of characters, all of whom have had their ups and downs over the years. It's no secret that the quality of writing in Sonic stories tends to fluctuate as time goes on, which is no surprise given that the franchise has been going for over 30 years and counting. Added on to that is the fact that these characters have crossed mediums, from games to comics, shows, and even movies, passed around between many different writers with different visions and interpretations. Yeah, it's little wonder why there are some discrepancies here and there with how some members of the cast are portrayed. And yet, through all of that, there is one character who's managed to remain remarkably consistent. One member of Sonic's vast lineup who's seen virtually no real change to his portrayal since his inception. His character is so consistent, in fact, that one could arguably even call it a detriment. I am, of course, referring to the one, the only, Big the Cat. Big first made his debut in 1998's Sonic Adventure. He was created by Yuji Iwakawa, Takashi Iizuka, and Naota Oshima. His inclusion was a rather curious choice, being one of two wholly original characters introduced to fill out a roster of 6 playable characters. Allegedly, the whole reason for Big's inception was because Sonic Team wanted someone whose playstyle was wholly unique compared to the other 5, which somehow translated into a fishing mechanic, because they were really proud of the water graphics they'd made at the time. You can tell because they decided to make the final boss a big water monster, but that's neither here nor there. Big's inclusion in the story was also a bit unorthodox. The narrative of Sonic Adventure revolves around Eggman's goal of completing Chaos, an ancient godlike entity that wiped out the Echidna tribe long ago. Eggman's goal is to enslave Chaos and turn the god into a weapon, a plan that goes about as well as you'd expect, but which winds up having far-reaching effects. Some characters are more directly involved with the Chaos plotline than others, but among them, Big is arguably the least relevant to the overall plot. In fact, the only reason Big is here at all is because his pet/best friend, Froggy, is suddenly abducted by Eggman's E-Series robots. Why? Because Froggy, by sheer chance, wound up swallowing a piece of the ancient god. In essence, in a cast full of heroes and one evil robot with a redemption arc, Big is effectively just some guy who gets dragged into this world-saving adventure on accident. He is most definitely not a hero and barely even knows what's really going on, but pushes on regardless to save his friend. It's honestly a pretty cool character premise and one that I rather like. Some average schmuck who's way in over his head but perseveres against all odds. In the end, Big is reunited with Froggy and the two of them finally return to a quiet, reclusive life in the jungle. Until Sonic Heroes, in which Froggy is kidnapped by Metal Sonic. Evidently, the frog still has some leftover Chaos Essence or whatever inside of him, which Metal needed to scan and copy to complete his transformation into Neo Metal, and eventually Metal Overlord. Big also teams up with Amy and Cream to complete Team Rose, which is kind of a weird choice, but I guess they needed someone to fill out the power roster slot. By the end of Heroes, Neo Metal is defeated and everyone more or less goes their separate ways for the time being. Big and Froggy are once again reunited and can return home once more to resume their ordinary life together. And for many years, Big's only major appearances would be relegated to cameos and Easter eggs. That's fair enough, I suppose. After all, Big's not exactly the sort to actively go seeking adventure most of the time. And when Sega was in its era of neglecting even their more popular characters, save for a handful of fan favorites, it's no surprise that Big the Cat was just nowhere to be seen. The one exception to this would be Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood, in which Big actually became a main playable party member. He joins the group kind of on a whim after meeting up with Amy and adds the benefit of being able to move through toxic gas. Somehow. Now, that whole game is kind of a lot to go over in its entirety, but I do find this to be a somewhat interesting take on Big's character. While he's still, in essence, just a guy wanting to live his best life, it shows us once again that Big's willingness to actively brave danger on behalf of his friends. even if he still probably doesn't fully understand what's going on. After that, Big would return to being little more than a cameo character for years. He finally returned to having a canonical appearance in the IDW comics, though. Kind of. A mini-issue reveals that, while Big is largely absent from actively taking part in the main story, he was apparently roaming around in the background of various arcs, just out of sight from the action. What was he doing? Looking for Froggy, of course. Big finally finds his friend once again during the Metal Virus arc, completely oblivious to the fact that Froggy has been infected. This, in turn, leads to Big transforming into a Zombot and appearing to menace the rest of the cast on the finale on Angel Island. Luckily, he gets cured thanks to the combined efforts of Supersonic and Super Silver, and continues on as normal, probably blissfully unaware of exactly what just happened as usual. Following this, Big appears in Sonic Frontiers to run the fishing hole areas. Except as we find out, this Big isn't even real, but rather a data copy created by Sonic's own memories. I guess that does a decent enough job explaining why he's even here on the islands. Well, real or not, at least he helped Sonic get the egg memos. He also appeared in Sonic Prime with a bunch of different multiverse variants, but I mean, do those even really count since they're technically not big either? As of this video, the real Big's most recent appearance is in Shadow Generations, where he is one of the characters Shadow saves from petrification in White Space, for some reason. Not really sure why, when he and Shadow have no real history or connection beyond appearing in Heroes together. And even then, the two never even so much as actually spoke. I guess it's just because Big wasn't in Sonic's campaign, and so they stuffed him into Shadows? But even then, as usual, the big guy doesn't really seem to know much of anything about what's actually going on. He just inquires about Froggy's location again, and that's about it. So, by this point, I feel like it's important to address something. I'm not necessarily upset by Big's lack of inclusion. Big is by no means a favorite character of mine, nor am I really craving to see more of him in more impactful roles. At the end of the day, Big is kind of just a joke character first and foremost. He is, as the name implies, a big guy leading a simple life in the jungle with his pet/best friend, and only occasionally gets involved in bigger storylines when a friend is in trouble or he's basically forced to be there. Even so, I just can't help feeling like Big the Cat has some untapped potential. I mean, the community perception of his character is just the idiot who keeps losing his frog all the time. Hell, I've even seen some crack theories out there that Big is actually abusive toward Froggy, which is why the little hopper keeps trying to run away. That's ridiculous, of course. Kinda reminds me of those theories about Princess Peach letting herself get abducted by Bowser. Those are just the kinds of interpretations that will inevitably arise when you maintain this sort of status quo for long enough. But I suppose that begs the question, what more can you really do with Big? Well, for starters, I think it couldn't hurt to just let him interact with the rest of the cast more often. Again, I don't need Big to necessarily have a starring role or even a playable one, but part of the reason he tends to feel so one note is because so much of his personality really just revolves around the fact that he really, really likes his frog fin and fishing. He has an implied friendship with characters like Amy Rose or Cream, but we never really get to learn how those relationships were even established in the first place. Does Amy, like, come over to fish with Big on the weekends or something? In the end, Big the Cat is a character who's just kinda there. He exists and generally only shows up for cameos or a gag, or possibly both. The guy is the source of many memes, to be sure, but Big in canon has so little going on that I'm not sure many people would even really notice if he just stopped showing up at all. For a guy who helped stop a wrathful god, even if only accidentally, I feel like that's kind of a waste. But what do you all think? Do you wish Big the Cat was allowed to be more prominent, or is he fine continuing to exist solely as a joke character? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and until next time, stay bright.